to this morning's celebration at the First Existentialist Congregation. Our musician today is the one and only Nick Kinney. And our opening song is Lean on Me, found in the White Book, in alphabetical order in the L's, and that's between M and N. To the First Existentialist Congregation of Atlanta. We are a spiritual community philosophically based on existentialist and feminist principles and dedicated to human liberation and protection of the natural world. We make our spiritual home in the old stone church, which was hand-built by the African-American Antioch East Baptist Church. We acknowledge that racial hostility drove those African-Americans from the area, and we honor them and the powerful history of this place. We also acknowledge that in the 1800s, the Muskogee Creek people were driven from this land, and we support justice for all indigenous people. Well, since our speaker today, Lynn, Hesse, is a novelist, and some members of our congregation are writers, and we have books surrounding us in this sanctuary, I'd like to momentarily address the art of writing. Last year, Stella and I visited the William Faulkner home in Oxford, Mississippi. It really is an interesting place if you ever get over that way. Anyway, Faulkner is quoted as saying this about writing, and it probably applies to other arts and crafts and other areas in our existence. Get it down. Take chances. It may be bad, but it's the only way you can do anything really good. And Toni Morrison said this about writing, and it also applies to other affairs in our lives. If there's a book that you want to read, but it hasn't been written yet, then you must write it. If anyone has community announcements, would you please write them down and bring them up to me, and we'll read them a little later. And there should be a pen and note paper there on that table in the back. Are there any newcomers with us here today, or someone who hasn't been here for a while? Paula. Paula. And Kim?
Kim DeMoy.
Any newcomers or others? Well, does anyone have a birthday, either let's go back to May 28th or so, and this week, and would you like to come up and we'll sing to you? Lynn, Hesse.
This was a little job.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Lynn. Happy birthday to you.
It's not every week that we get to sing to our speaker. Birthday?
There's another birthday.
Any other birthdays?
Here comes the birthday.
There's one.
It's actually Friday, but I won't be here next weekend, so.
Happy birthday to you. Cha cha cha.
Any others? Well, we'll move on to our second congregational song. And it is Wish I Knew How It Feels to Be Free, and that's found in the pink book on page 7. Please rise if you're ready.
I wish I knew how it would feel to be free. I wish I could break all these chains holding me. I wish I could say all the things that I saying loud, saying clear, for the whole world to hear. I wish I could share all the love in my heart, remove all the thoughts that still keep us apart. I wish you could know what it means to be free, and I say free. Everyone should be free. Wish I could give all I'm longing to give. I wish I could live like I'm longing to live. I wish I could do all the things I can do, though I'm way overdue. I'd be starting anew. I wish I could be like a bird in the sky. If I found I could fly, I'd soar to the sun and look down at the sea. Then I'd sing 'cause I know how it feels to be free.
At this time, we invite our fellowship minister, Reverend Marcia Mitchell, to come up and share her thoughts. Marcia?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. It's great to see you all.
No sound.
Is it not on? Are you, can you hear me? There we go. Can you hear me now? Okay. Wow. Again, great to see you. Glad that you came today. And I just want to say how much I really appreciate Libby and Charlene. Coordinating our fantastic book and bake sale, and for everyone who volunteered. There were lots of folks, lots of helping hands, and that's exactly how it needs to be. That's how it gets done, and nobody has to work too hard, and we all, have a good time. And we make a little bit of money, for first Eve. So it's a win-win all the way around, and I hope that you will take time after the service and still enjoy going around and looking and seeing some things that you can't just live without, and some goodies to eat. But thank you so much for doing this every year. I know you put a lot of heart and soul and hard work into it, so thank you so much. And I think that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Marcia. We do have some community announcements, and to repeat what Marcia said, thanks to all who donated and volunteered for the book and bake sale. Please stay after the service, and we can you can buy books, and we need people to help deliver boxes to the thrift stores and get the boxes, the books box. See Bill Reed for the address of Second Chance Thrift Store, where the remaining books will be taken. And speaking of books, as I said, our speaker today, Lynn Hesse, is a novelist, and her books will be available on this table right here after the service. And she has several suspense novels set in Alabama and Georgia, always suspenseful places. And she will sign them for you.
If you buy them.
Yes. Mary Howard is interested, if you hear from anyone here who is interested in attending the Atlanta Gay Men's Chorus event at City Hall on the evening of Friday, June 9th, and see Mary after the service. Mary?
That's me.
Very good. And our song is performing today at 4 p.m. at the Northside Drive Baptist Church. Our song, 4 p.m.
And it's free.
And it's free.
What is it?
Yeah.
Our song.
My bad.
Chorus. I sing with them. But I guess- Oh, it's gay and lesbian and everybody. Everybody can sing. And we'll perform. Well, they're going. I'm not going. I don't get to go with them. They're going to Italy to perform in a conference, like a conference. And so they're going to be choruses from around the world singing there. And what they're performing today is they have to perform it here before they take it to Italy. So this is required of the organization. Well, cool.
Thank you, Carol. And in your program today, you should see the insert, a comeback musical featuring the Antioch East Baptist Church and going back to where the bricks were laid. And that's presented by the Biracial History Project. That's Saturday, June 24th at 3 p.m.
Here.
Right here at the First Existentialist Congregation of the Land. 470 Kendler Park. Oh, no. At this time, we will have a period of silence for you to gather your thoughts and meditate. And there are candles on either side of the sanctuary if you would like to light them for any reason. Please rise in body and spirit if you are willing to.
Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you. Through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Let a dancing song star comes out at night. Without the dark there can be no light. And if there's only nothing bright, so let it be a dance. Let the sun shine. Share the laughter, bear the pain. And round and round we go again. So let it be a dance. Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you. Through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a
So your offerings, however large or small, are appreciated.
So in honor of our speaker, Lynn, I'll do a little something that I have in mind for the dancing policeman.
And thank you, dancers. Our speaker today is Lynn Hesse, and her topic is the dancing police officer. Lynn is the award-winning author of the novels Well of Rage, Murder in Mobile, A Matter of Respect, Murder in Mobile Book 2, Another Kind of Hero, and The 40 Knots Burn. As a modern ballet dancer and former law enforcement officer, she writes and lives with her husband and his rescue cat in Stone Mountain, Georgia. She was police officer standard training certified as an officer at Georgia State University. She was one of the first female officers in uniform in DeKalb County. In 1980, she won the DeKalb County Police Department Academic Award, and in 1997, she won the Larry Quinn Award for Academic Merit and Honorable Service. She was also a detective in the Traffic Specialist Unit, handling death notifications, specialized accident scene investigation documentation, and criminal prosecution of offenders. She was part of a 7-woman coalition that fought DeKalb County to allow women to make rank in the 1980s. She was part of a team who rallied for peer counseling and the Employee Assistance Program. As a sergeant, she developed a squad to answer domestic violence 911 calls in the highest crime area of the county. While a lieutenant, she supervised approximately 30 patrol officers in a mobile crisis unit consisting of a nurse and an officer who answered calls involving the mentally ill. Lynn is retired from law enforcement. She retired in 2003. She is a member of the Atlanta Writers Club, Sisters in Crime, Walton Writers, National League of American Penwomen, International Women Police Association, and Crime Writers Association, United Kingdom. Please welcome Lynn.
I had this birthday on the 28th of May, as you know, and I appreciate you singing to me. And, you know, I get introspect. Yeah, I just have to look at my whole life every birthday. It's kind of, well, you know, it gets very tedious, really. But, so I rewrote and rewrote and rewrote what I was going to say, and I edited this morning. So. Don't worry, that was just one of those drafts. So, yeah. Thank you so much for inviting me to come. I know so many of you already, and I'm looking forward to meeting more of you. Some of you probably know me from working with Pat and White in the Beacon Dance Company. We, of course, have been on Beltline. I've done some of my short plays, which involve dance, at the Corps for their luncheon series. Field work through Corps also, and at the Support Center, etc. And I'm a dancing flower for peace. I've been a dandelion for many years. And so I'm also part of the Interplay performance group. And I had a project called the Labyrinth Project, 90s, I guess, mid-90s, and Carla Radjarosa was part of that, and I think you all know her from her coming here and her husband, Paul. And so she's one of my dear friends, and, you know, I just think of her every time I think of sacred dance and what we did. We sort of did a historical perspective on sacred dance at the Pine Lake Rec Center together. I'm also a member of Alternate Roots, and I think about, I'm one of those regulate guns, not women, and so some of you know me from that.
Yeah.
Okay, and I was very fortunate to have the women, the Georgia Coalition of Women Artists back me, and they produced one of my short plays at Agnes Scott. I was part of the alternate book project at the Sycamore Gallery. and did a little performance piece with that. I want to thank Lori Teague. I have to mention her because she is the choreographer for the Dancing Flowers. Leslie Friedman is also part of the originator of that group, as well as Noel Marks. And I'm going to mention Nancy White because she, has been there at all the performances every time. She came to my first book launch, which was at my house, and my sister made a blessing quilt for me, and I have your writing as well as Patty's on my blessing quilt, and I really, really treasure that. Who else? People like Kathy Denopra and Alice Teeter, Jennifer Denning from Interplay. I just have to mention all these people who have, helped me in my life be a good writer as well as a performer. As a police officer, if I write you a ticket, I hope you've gotten over it by now. If we met on a call or an accident scene, I hope that you saw my best professional side, because it was my goal to give you the best possible service under the circumstances with the call volume and priority 1 calls pending and shortage of officers, which was a daily problem on Southside. So, I was born in 1951 in the flood in Chanute, Kansas. So I was born in a crisis. Wonder if that has something to do. Anyway, because I did grow up to be really good to deal with crisis. And life, to me, is this interconnectedness between movement and change. Every 7 to 10 years, actually most of the cells in our bodies replenish. And if my mother is to be believed, I kind of danced out of the womb. At least I was a very unhappy child until I could walk and get where I wanted to go. Recently, I saw a film called Women Talking by filmmaker Sarah Polley. It's a film based on Marie Towns' novel about women in an isolated religious colony. And they are trying to make the decision whether they're going to leave this colony because of the violence to women and their children. And they quoted Philippians 4:8. Finally, brethren, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is good, is of good repute. If there is any excellence, is there anything worthy of praise? Dwell on these things. Well, I don't disagree with that. However, one of the things they had to deal with was their religion teaches them, as many do, to forgive. But when does forgiveness mean giving permission? So, I have been dealing with this for quite a while. In my first book, Well of Rage, Mary Williams is a mother of color who's waiting for the remains of her murdered son, Terrence Washington Williams, to be found and the killer brought to justice. And so in this book, that's one of the questions. Do we forgive? Do we forgive this kind of injustice? It was written in 2000, which was actually before there was actually a hate crime. But the actual hate crime statute was not in effect until, I want to say, the 80s. But anyway, so where do we come from? Where do I come from? I come from immigrants. I come from Scotch-Irish. And I'm very familiar with the sign, no Irish and no N-word need apply. So we all have dealt with our own share of prejudice, hatred, poverty, probably, and crime. So as a servant, which I was brought up to believe that we serve mankind, that this is our main goal as a human being, is to serve mankind. I was also taught to be seen and not heard. It's very inconvenient to be poor, but it teaches you to adapt and be inventive. For instance, when things break down, they might never get fixed, like a junk car, or maybe they get fixed with ingenuity, like a rubber band or gum wrapper used on a carburetor, which my father tended to do those kind of things. But it doesn't last very long, right? My dad was a visionary. He could make it work really hard. And he was a fixer. He was a car salesman. He was the TV repairman. He was the grocery store clerk manager. He was the repairman for Montgomery Ward's until he was scales. And he would have these big dreams, and then once it got, going, my dad was gone. He had other things to dream about, right? Well, this cycle of poverty, this carries some shame with it. And it follows you around. And sometimes you're really angry about it. My dad had a temper. I don't come from a family of a history in law enforcement, but people who, like I said, believed in service, believed in treating people right and keeping your word. But they were also very charismatic. They could tell a good story. They could make this mundane existence of working from the time you got up to the time you went to bed. They could actually make it fun. So I didn't come from sophisticated folks, but I came from laughter and music and myth. My father ended most meals, and I'm talking meals, with peanut butter and jelly. And so we got used to that, and my father was usually too tired to tell us stories or, be his most pleasant self at night. But every once in a while, we would beg, and he would tell us a story. So he made up the story of the peanut butter caves. He had built our house in Missouri from concrete bricks. There was flat top. And we didn't have a basement, but that didn't matter. My dad told us this story when I was like 7 or 8. That there were caves underneath our house that went on, and that Bloody Bones the pirate was down there, and that there was many, many, many rooms full of peanut butter. But when we went down there, you better be careful because, Bloody Bones was down there. And so I think it was my sister that had the expression, "Is that for real, Daddy?" And she goes, "Is that for real, Daddy?" But anyway, many years later, my mother would use that as a basis for a story that she had to write for her final in education when she went back to college, which was quite a feat because my mother and my father both had 10th grade educations. So it came a long way. He also did a story about Belch Far 8, and I don't remember the details, but I remember Belch Far 8. I just think it's a great name. Okay. My parents, as I said, were very fun to be around, and they could make the neighbors really jealous when they danced the jitterbug or when they put on the horror fundraiser at the Webster Elementary School in Missouri. But as I said, most days they worked from sun up to sundown. My father, as we all do, I guess, had his cruel side. And one of the things he would do to punish you was to not speak to you. And acknowledging your existence or not is very important. And this could go on for weeks if you didn't put the nail clippers back. Okay? And later, I found out that police officers will do that to a rookie, especially if you're female. They tried to run me off. I guess I was working Northside, and I'd been there maybe less than 2 years, and one of the things I liked to do was to take this evaluation system, which was totally not based on any facts at all, just whatever they wanted to give you. It was very random. And they had decided that they were going to give me low scores. They didn't have anything to base it on, but, you know, they were men. So they gave me this low score, and I wanted to talk to the person that had done the eval. And they said no. And I had been very compliant. I hadn't made any waves. I had done my job. I worked really hard. I worked the last call every day from Northside and came back in the traffic when I was a single parent. I had to pay somebody to take care of my child. I had said nothing. But I said, you know what? You will let me talk to who did this. And you're going to give me a couple days off vacation because I had worked almost 2 years without any vacation. And I said, they said, no, you will not. And I said, yeah, I'm going to.
All right.
And this was from somebody who was taught to respect your elders, yes ma'am, you know. I didn't talk about them, but I stood up for myself that day. Yeah. So they brought me in, sat me down with a big folder like that with my name on it. And I showed him he was a captain, I believe, at that point. He leaves the room for, I don't know, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. That's mistreated. That's a police thing. That's not nice. So he comes back in, he said, my last name is Holmes. He said, Officer Holmes, you know, I think you just need to probably just be a housewife or secretary or something. I said, really? He said, well, I had a son. I was a single parent. I said, I have a son to raise. And I got through the academy with the academic award. And I will get everything everybody else did to make that grade. And I said, I'm not leaving. So you can tell all those guys out there that I'm not leaving. And I did for 25 years. Didn't make any friends that day, but you know. So I come from a very small town, Webb City, Missouri, near Joplin, southwest Missouri. And my mom, you know, I had these visions of moms selling Stanley Home products. And her girlfriend, Sharon Johnson, I remember that she took us to our first McDonald's store-bought hamburger. Later, I would learn that Scott Joplin actually came from Joplin, and that there were black people who lived 7 miles away from me, because I never saw them. We had our social hierarchy, though, even in this white mining town. There was the Moses. They were white, and they were poor, but they lived on the west side of town where we had paved roads, and I lived on the other side of town. But they had a lot of stuff, and you know, junk, and you know, they had motorcycles, and they weren't very clean, you know, in their person. And so if we needed to make a comment, a judgment, we would say, you know, you need to clean up your place. It's looking like the Moses. So years later, so you know, unfortunately, as I look back, I can see that there's always somebody you can look down on. If you know, look hard enough, there's always somebody. I had a step-grandfather. We always ate, even though it was hard times sometimes. But we always ate. I had a lecherous step-grandfather. His name was James, everybody called him Rube. He owned a country store. And I remember that there was a price to pay. There was a price to pay. And he kind of oogled my mother when he came down for supper. And he also French kissed Kathy and I when we were very, very small. So I learned not to trust men. And my mother kind of reinforced that by saying, you know, it was totally up to me. It was totally up to the women to make sure that didn't happen because, you know, poor men, they can't control themselves. So that's how I was raised. And, but I did get to walk around, and I did get the freedom of being, you know, able to go to the library and read whatever I wanted. Yeah. My first big disappointment was when they told me that I couldn't dance anymore, that they couldn't afford dance lessons anymore. And Dad had moved us to Dewey, Oklahoma, and we didn't have, socially, education-wise, we were not able to be very happy, and it was dry, and it was dusty, and we moved back not too long after that, and then, of course, he said, we'll never move again. Well, of course, we moved to Toledo, Ohio, a year after that, and then, I don't remember, that was the year President Kennedy was assassinated. We all know where we were when he was assassinated. And then 2 years after that, we went to Atlanta. And my dad was doing the oral route with small motivational tapes in the basement while I kind of took care of everything else. And I went to North Fulton High School, and people had chauffeurs and matching skirt and sweater section, debutantes. And boy, did we not fit in. I'm telling you. My mama didn't drive. She had a phobia about it. And so she would cut, my mother always did these slow part-time jobs so my father could do his thing. And she worked at the modern dry cleaning plant. I think it's still there. And she would walk down our backyard and walk across to go there. And my first job was at doing clerking there for $1.25 an hour. One of the big things in my life as a teenager was I read Betty Friedan's The Feminine Mystique.
Yeah.
And boy, the light bulb went off, and I was like, there's people like me out there, hey! And I went to my mother and I said, Mom, did you ever want to do anything besides being a wife and mother? Oh, no, I love being a wife and mother. She was just so like, what are you talking about? Well, of course, later, not too many years later, she would get her GED, and she would go back to school, and she would teach the deaf. Back in that day, it was called hearing impaired, but she had to be called by God for that to happen, but it didn't come. So that was a biggie in my life. I married an Indiana boy, a preacher's son, and I don't recommend that. I got lots of problems. But anyway. When I came back, before I came back, I was going to Indiana Purdue, and I got to ride with some female police officers as part of my sociology class. And I had a final exam in my philosophy class, and I did this painting of this, wild, moving thing, expanding, limitless universe thing, and then I danced my final exam. And the professor was in that. I remember that. So I ended up in the motel business with my husband because he couldn't keep a job. And he didn't leave me. I didn't leave him. He left me, thank God, in 1978. And I think it was because of my religious background that I felt like that I could not leave. And I think there's even women today who will not leave because of their religion, how they were raised, whatever. But domestic violence has been part of my life. He never physically abused me, but he was verbally abusive. I managed to be in a variety show while I was in Terre Haute, Indiana. And so it came very clear to me that I needed to remain and dance, else I was not going to be happy. So when I came back to Atlanta, I was able to go to free classes in an art center in downtown near the Capitol. So that was my first experience with art-funded grants, and believe me, it was a lifesaver for me. There's so many things. As you were told at the introduction, I went with DeKalb County, and I graduated in 1980. And I was able to do the things with domestic violence, the mobile crisis unit, help women to get rank. There was a few other things like, if you needed, there was a health crisis and the AIDS crisis, and my officers were paranoid about getting CPR, and I managed to get the masks that they needed to do that. There was no debriefing for anything besides a critical shooting incident, and I managed to get debriefing for any situation that might have triggered the officers. This was unheard of. When I was a lieutenant, something simple like just having a sergeant's meeting. You know, yeah. Nobody ever had a sergeant's meeting. Why would you need to do that? Okay. So just, simple things like that. So anyway, dancing has balanced me, and I was a sacred dance teacher in the Methodist Church for about 20 years, and went to the Southeast jurisdictional conferences and taught, and so that was my outlet. I couldn't afford to go and do vacations, but I could afford to do that. So, and I did get a chance to do some traveling. I did get to go to China with the Friendship Force, and also to France to walk the labyrinth at Chartres Cathedral. And those both influenced me greatly. So I just want to tell you one story about there's all this really sad stuff that happens to you and traumatic stuff that happens to you as a police officer. But I was working in TSU, the Traffic Specialist Unit, and I had to make a death notification. This woman had been hit head-on at Candler and 20. And by the time I got everything marked and all the things you have to do and following the perpetrator to the hospital and all of that, it was about 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and it was her mother lived in East Point. And I knock on the door, and I can see her, she's sitting there rocking. And she comes up and she opens the door and she lets me in. She says, how you doing? I introduced myself. And she said, please have a seat. I said, okay. Because usually, I'm the one saying, do you want to sit down, ma'am? I have something. So she's being very nice to me and very hostessy. And so I tell her, in as nice a terms as I can, that her daughter's dead. And she says, yes, I know. I said, excuse me, ma'am? She said, I know. She said, I felt it. She said, I've been sitting here waiting for you to come. So I go through what I'm supposed to, do. Just say, do you have anybody you want me to call? Do you have a minister, anybody that you would like to come and be with you? No, I'm fine. I said, ma'am, are you sure? Yeah, no. So I stayed with her a few minutes. I think I had a cup of coffee with her. But anyway, I stayed a few minutes, and she walked me to the door. And I said, ma'am, are you sure that you're okay? And she said, no, I'm really concerned about you. I said, ma'am, I appreciate that, but and I didn't know if it was because I was out at 4 o'clock in the morning by myself. That was what, I don't know, but it seemed like she was just personally concerned about me emotionally. And that is one of those things that happens on the road as a police officer that you don't hear about, is the kindness that is given back to you. So, my next big disappointment was that my kids did not graduate from college, and I managed to graduate as well as my mother and my sister. They were both teachers. So, why did I leave law enforcement? Well, I left because I didn't think it was the answer. I felt like that I had done some good there. I felt like when I was one-on-one on the street, it was a good thing. But I did not like being middle management. I did not like the hierarchy telling me what to do, because most of the time I thought they were wrong. And Doran Brown, Sheriff Doran Brown, I don't know if you're familiar, but he was killed in his driveway. And he was a good friend of mine. He was one that helped with peer counseling, etc. And my husband actually worked that call as a firefighter He was at Station 7 and actually worked that call. That really affected me because the investigation was botched intentionally. And 911 happened. And the last thing that was the icing on the cake, so to speak, was that, and you've got to understand, I have heard every filthy word, every disdaining, thing about women possible to speak in my 25 years. Okay. And I'm at the pumps, and the day after I get back from being off a couple of days, and the officer says, we had, he was in SWAT. He said, we had this call out, and we were told to stand down because this guy 10 years ago, and he had kidnapped her, and he was raping her. And the chief wouldn't let us go in because nothing was being done to her that hadn't been done to her when she was married. So the officer was telling me he's upset. I get upset. I go into work, and my captain calls me in, and he tells me the same, almost exact words. And I just remember knowing so clearly that if I did not leave, that if I didn't leave that office and leave this job, I was going to tell them what I really thought. And it wasn't going to be nice. It was going to be, there's going to be a lot of cussing. And I didn't want to go out that way. So I went on vacation, and I made the decision, and I started writing Well of Rage. So, I have Well of Rage, and I wrote the sequel to that book, and there's some information in there about Africa Town, and an attempt to make it, preserve that site. And this is based on the last slave ship Cotillion burning in the Oglala Bay. And it's true. And so both of those novels are available. And then I have a suspense novel about Roma people. I did a lot of research for that. As you can tell, I go for the underdog stories. And another kind of hero is a traditional mystery set in small town in South Georgia. The Me Too anthology, I'm very proud of. I just have a short story in it, obviously, but it was an honor to be in it, and we got to launch it at the Mysterious Bookshop in 2019 in New York. So there's some New York City big-time authors in there if you're willing, if you'd like to copy that book. But anyway, I'm going to shut up. And if you have any questions, I appreciate it.
Lynn, Joe has a question.
Oh, okay. Get this off for somebody.
I'm sure. Hello?
Yeah.
It's on.
What?
Just talk loud.
I'm sure you must have made allies at DeKalb. Did you? I mean, you mentioned that the sheriff that was killed was a friend. But I was wondering, because you had such a hard time in the beginning, were there ever any allies at that time that you could speak with about the difficulties?
Well, unfortunately, we were one of the first classes where there was at least a third of the class was female, and about half of those left in the first year. I never worked with another female. I never had
female supervisors until much later.
Can you use the mic, please? Thank you.
Okay, unfortunately, there were not any female supervisors, and so, and my class was the first class with a good number of women in it, and some of them quit pretty quickly. I tried to offer to younger officers, female officers, you know, if you ever need to talk, get a hold of me, and they never did. There was this culture of if you work really hard, you know, then you will make it and you will be accepted. Well, I have to tell you, I worked really hard, and I knew what hard work was, and they never really accepted me. There was a few, there's a few females along the way. I had a woman that, you know, my car broke down when I was in academy class, and you have to be there and you have to be on time. They don't take any excuses, or at least they didn't when I was going through the academy. And I had a single parent. I didn't know what I was going to do. There's no money. My parents didn't have any money. I didn't know what I was going to do. And I think we were in the shower. We had one shower for 6 ladies. And we had 10 minutes to get ready after PT. But she said, well, I just pick you up, take you, so it's fine. And she drove me back and forth, and that's how I got through the academy. So there are people like that. But, you know, we never worked together because there's so few females. We were all working shift, you know, probably in a different precinct. Yeah, so, this.
What, if anything, is the membership with the National Women Police Officers that you are belonging to? Is it influencing policy that you can see?
Well, in 1986, some GBI officers and one other female besides me made sure that we had a conference here. And I tried to promote it. And apparently, a few years before that, they had sent a couple of females to New York that I just found out about a couple of weeks ago. And they said, come back and do a women's club. And so they didn't follow through with that. But anyway, there was this only way to say this good old boy system that if you aligned yourself with those radical women, you know, that they were going to give you a hard time, and you were not going to get promoted, and so on, so on, so on. And so there was many women, even when we were trying to do the when we did the lawsuit, there was those 5 women who had been in the first 15, top of the list, because it was all done by, you know, the grading system. And so they were in the top 15 people, and they passed over every one of them. And we went and said, please just do what you're supposed to do, promote these women, we don't want to make a big deal. They said, no, you can sue us, but we're not promoting them. So we tried to get a class action suit at that time, and nobody, it was me, one other woman, and 5 women. We sold hot dogs down in Decatur so we could get the money together for a lawyer. But it worked. Just took a couple of years. But yes, the International Women Police Officers is a very good thing. It's a training organization, or it was in my day. But it scares people. It scares them, you know. Oh, that's a women's organization.
Oh, wow. I gotta say something. I have been a member of alternate groups since 1980 something. And I've never seen anyone in alternate groups do what Lynn just talked about. Live how she lived as an artist. artists. I'm leaving alternate roots because I don't believe in art for art's sake. I believe in art to make people do what they don't get in any other language until you get to the frontal lobes with pictures or movies or songs or dance. And she's trying to do this. And there needs to be a lot more oomph from arts organizations that say they're about art and activism than there is in the world. Women police officers in India are themselves fighting the gang rape culture. We have to be artists as plumbers, engineers, scientists. We have to use creative measures to get sense through to people's heads. And I'm sick of arts organizations that say that's what they're trying to do. Not.
Thank you, Paula.
Amen to that, sister. And thank you, Lynn. Our closing song is People Got to Be Free, found in the White Book, in alphabetical order, under the fees.